I begin, Monty, I just want to say thank you so much for your Joseph Campbell reference to the hero's journey, which definitely so accurately resonates with the first time Passivhaus experience, and even potentially the second and third, but it definitely does get better and easier, as you rightly said. And also, just to, before I get started, I'd also really like to thank Passivhaus Accelerator for all the great work that you guys have all been doing, proliferating Passivhaus ideas, and really strengthening our community and throughout this process. And it's really, really exciting to see our community expanding through this shared knowledge, and it just seems to be getting greater and greater and bigger. So thank you, Passivhaus Accelerator, for all your great work. And now I'd like to share with you one of our Passivhaus journeys, which started here in Gramercy Park, Manhattan, where on East 20th Street, there was a brick shell building with wood joists. It was a two-family duplex over duplex. And this project started with two conflicting parameters between the existing condition of the building and what our clients desired from it. The existing building had dark interiors, had very small exterior windows, low ceiling heights, and with spaces that were really closed off from each other, as well as having incredibly stale interior air throughout the entire building. Furthermore, it also had a great amount of structural deficiencies in both the party walls as well as in the foundations. And the building footprint was quite small at 19 feet wide. So those were the existing building conditions. As far as what our clients desired from this building, first, I'd like for you to meet them. This is Sudha and Anil Sahai. What they desired for this project to embody was the essence of their love for the ocean with its fresh sea air, the calm sound of the waves, and it's just vast openness. They love this feeling. And they also wanted the project to embody their love for an abundance of sunlight and just all natural elements in general. Thus, our clients wanted this whole space to focus on sunlight, fresh air, calm sounds, open space, and natural elements. And even more, they also wished for a lot more program than what this particular small footprint could accommodate graciously. And at the same time, while they were wishing this, we were trying to meet all of their desires, and within the context of what originally started out as a simple cosmetic interior renovation only. But as fate would have it, just as we were finishing the bid set for the following morning, Sudha and Anil called us and they asked us to increase the scope of work. And this changed everything. This led to a 1.5-story vertical addition, new increased floor-to-floor heights, and a full rear horizontal extension. Now, while it would have been easier for us to continue with conventional building strategies, this far into the project, knowing that now we were more actively engaged to design the building envelope, and to address issues of building science, such as preventing condensation and mold, and knowing what our clients desired the most, all of this led us to consider the significant benefits of Passivhaus design. And thankfully, to the open-mindedness and faith of our clients, Sudha and Anil, and with the support of the Passivhaus Institute, Passivhaus Academy 475, and rest of the entire Passivhaus community, we began our journey into this Passivhaus retrofit. Among the 5 principles of Passivhaus, 3 of these principles were particularly challenging for our project. And this required a lot of thinking outside the box in order to meet the requirements of the Passivhaus benefit standards. The first of these was the passive solar optimization. Due to our 2 very tall neighbors to the south of us, we had only 1 hour of direct winter sunlight to rely on for our passive solar heat gain. And this was not sufficient to meet the full Passivhaus requirements, such as for a space heating demand, which contributed to directing us in certifying under the Enefit component certification. And that gave us more leeway for situations that we could not readily control, such as this. And it also did not meet our client's desire for abundant sunlight. So all of this placed a lot more burden on the building envelope's thermal performance to compensate for the lack of solar heat gain during the wintertime. And so through a lot of research in our studio to address this challenge, we developed a mosaic of different building materials, different building assemblies, which were poured-in-place concrete masonry units, brick, structural steel, wood and light gauge metal framing, and exterior rain screen. Each had its own unique characteristics, which we had to carefully consider in order to optimize the thermal performance of each of these assemblies. The colors here represent 7 different exterior wall types that made up the building mosaic so that we could maximize the thermal value for literally every square inch of the building envelope. The second and third Passivhaus principles that were also of particular challenge for us were thermal insulation and thermal bridge-free design. And this occurred hand in hand. But before we could address this, we first had to structurally remediate the existing building and prepare for the new extension. And we did this with poured-in-place concrete for the foundation, new concrete masonry units to reinforce the structurally deficient party walls, poured-in-place concrete for the party wall transition curve to receive the new extension of the structural steel and light gauge metal framing. So for the thermal insulation performance of the new vertical and horizontal extensions, our selection of the construction types was based on maximizing the insulative value of the wall assembly, balanced with structural and fire code requirements. So for the front and rear extensions, the building code for this project allowed us to take advantage of the higher thermal performance of wood framing. And for the rear of our horizontal extensions, structurally, we used a full height steel moment frame, and the wood was only used for the wall infills. And for our party wall extensions, which had to be completely non-combustible by code, rather than continuing up with masonry, we chose structural steel and light gauge metal framing in order to achieve the same thermal performance as masonry, but gaining an extra foot of width in our narrow interior space of the 19 feet wide building in this Manhattan townhouse. So, and now for the third Passivhaus principle of thermal bridge-free design, which needed to be considered at the transition from the existing masonry party wall with its now new poured-in-place concrete curb that is to receive the new metal frame extension. And we had to, in this case, isolate this change in construction types with 2 different thermal break materials. And we can see these 2 types more clearly with a closer look. For the structural steel bearing points, we used a high strength Fabrica thermal break material. And for our light gauge metal framing, we were able to use choose a different material, the foam glass product, which had better thermal performance. But this particular product required using a steel tube to transform the point load of the metal studs into a uniformly spread load that the foam glass material required. And to get the full thermal performance of our new party wall extension, we used a 4-inch thick continuous mineral wool, rock wool, before it used to be called Roxol, insulation throughout. And to eliminate the thermal bridging of the fastening system for the insulation finish cladding, we chose a fiberglass-based clip system, Cascadia clips, to isolate the metal Z-girt from the metal studs. And here is a thermal modeling of an exterior wall that uses a conventional clip system, where we can see the result of the heat flowing out of the building through the fasteners. And here, with the fiberglass clip system, the conduction of heat is impeded. Here's a thermal image of a test wall built both ways, where we can see the reduced heat loss on the left side compared to the conventional clip system on the right. So with all of these strategies in place, when we compared it to the New York State average household energy use, in addition to meeting the Passivhaus benefit target, we also achieved a 77% reduction in energy use. And here are some of the building results. The front of the building, where we enlarged and reconfigured all the windows in order to address the increased floor-to-floor height, as well as bringing in more daylight, along with the vertical addition that you can see in gray. And the first floor interior, where we created a much more open flow and let more light in through the larger clear wall high performance triple glazed windows. And similar looking the other way. And one of the bathrooms, where we used materials that were reminiscent of the ocean sand and wood, along with the invisible features of the balanced ventilation system that provides the freshest filtered air, replacing the formal stair air quality in the building throughout. And the former top floor with low ceiling height and closed-off spaces, with increased floor height now throughout the building. And again, bringing in more sunlight and openness that Sudha and Anil were desiring, inspired by nature's characteristics. And the former cellar with similar strategies. And finally, the rear facade. Another opportunity where we were able to enlarge the glazing in order to bring in more light and a sense of openness by using the high performance triple glazed windows in order to ensure optimal thermal performance. And so thanks to Sudha's and Anil's trust and deep patience, we were able to persevere in solving these very complex building issues. And now, while the usual goals in construction is typically to simplify the building process as much as possible, in this case, due to the kind of complexity that we were facing, we found that a mosaic of construction types is what gave us the best result. And I'd like to share with you just quickly a segment of Sudha, our client, speaking about her experience so far living in this passive townhouse that was created by 475 Performance Building Supply.
In a nutshell, I think living in a passive house is having the ultimate homeliness that you want in a home, and the best metaphor for it is being in your mother's womb. You're insulated, you're protected, but as yet you have everything you need. You have fresh air, you're surrounded by the perfect temperature, you're living in the perfect temperature, and you're coddled.
It's been a true privilege and seriously rewarding to hear the satisfaction of Sudha's experience living in this passive house. And knowing the incredible benefits of Passivhaus, we now apply and reference Passivhaus as our North Star and apply it everywhere, even no matter what the context, whether it's from the upstate New York Gold Creamer structure that we designed to an urban masonry construction additions, you name it, it gets applied. And not only in building designs, but also to spread the word and empower everyone to learn the benefits of Passivhaus. We are extending beyond our professional community, as Prudence has mentioned, and teaching in all levels of schools. So from last year, teaching in high schools to elementary schools, even remotely during our pandemic, and really getting to see how they come up with creative ideas, from dance forms to kindergartners, drawings on exploring installation, as well as a third grader talking about energy recovery ventilation systems. And you just name it in so many other creative ways: Lego sets, models, dance movements, and drawings. and just having fun, enjoying exploring passive house ideas, even to creating a music video remotely during the pandemic. This really shows that the resiliency of our community to learn and express passive house ideas truly really shows us that no matter what the context, passive house really is for everyone. And just to help in this endeavor, I'd like to further share with you a little bit of what we learned from some of our passive house journeys. First one, what we've learned is to really have good timing of integrating passive house as part of the first design decision, which we found to be the best way forward, much less headache, unlike how we approached this project, not because of choice, but that's part of the big lesson we learned. The second is also having a good contractor, which I think we're all aware of. And this doesn't necessarily mean that they're experienced in passive house, but that they are truly open and wanting to do good work and doing the right thing. So of course, if they're experienced in passive house, so much the better. But at the end of the day, just someone who's very open-minded and willing to do it and having the desire to do it. The third lesson that we found was particularly if you are working on an infill townhouse project with shared party walls, such as this project, being good neighbors is critical to projects going smoothly. Often we depend on them for access to build from their side of the property, or in general, we make lots of noises on our side and many factors that would impact our neighbors' lives, which could potentially, get them annoyed to the point where they call the Department of Buildings and put in a complaint that shuts the job down for further investigation and literally delays the project for months, which we have experienced. Thus, we found out that having a really, really good communication and understanding with the neighbors goes a long way to making the whole construction process so much easier all around. The fourth lesson is, and this is just a technical one, but to emphasize in when we introduce thermal breaks, that they really maintain structural integrity to the construction assembly, as well as meeting any fire codes. To always ask how a particular thermal break material is behaving in its structural performance and what are the parameters it requires for optimal performance by checking in with the manufacturer specifications, their technical representatives, and confirming it with engineers from their side as well as our side. This is probably one of the trickiest that we find in detailing is thermal breaks and creating a thermal bridge-free construction. And fifth is to stay optimistic and have faith. Never give up, no matter how challenging the work scope seems to be. There are always solutions. As long as there is a will, there's always a way. And I have many. The sixth is that something that is intrinsic in architecture already, thus should not be such a far stretch, that is to have deep perseverance and patience, even more with passive house, which truly puts this to the test. And the last one is assume that there will always be problems to solve, which is one of the main aspects of architecture to start with. Thus, no surprise there, just another day of good old-fashioned architectural problem solving. And with all of these pieces of the pie and just a little extra gray hair, we get to experience all the benefits of passive house. And if this is your first passive house project, as Monty has said, the next one gets a lot better, easier, and definitely promise that we'll all be so glad that we did it. And that's it. Thank you very much.